Frollo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frollo app is the one for you. The Frollo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frollo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frollo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frollo, search for Frollo, Frollo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frollo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frollo podcast. This week, I am so excited to be joined by McKenzie Hannewyk, who is also known on Instagram as the Hyped Up Healing. And McKenzie is a healing from heartbreak and self-love expert, which I know is going to be hugely relevant to a lot of our listeners. McKenzie, welcome to the Frollo podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Really excited to get into a chat with you today. Like I said, I'm certain that a huge amount of our listeners and the Frollo community will find this conversation really interesting. So I guess how I always like to start off with some of the experts that we have on the Frollo podcast is asking, how is it that you got into this work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So, I think heartbreak and going through some type of either breakup or perhaps it's divorce is just something that a lot of us can relate to us. A lot of us have been in love before, have had these really beautiful, amazing connections and relationships. And it seemed that the more that I started writing and sharing about relationships and self-love, the more that this topic of losing love and what that looks like and what that feels like and how, how do we grapple with letting go of it when we have had it was just something that was such a hugely popular experience, a shared experience among so many of us. So that's kind of how I got into it, writing about, things about my own experiences and how those could relate to others and bring comfort to others, and some of my own success within my own journey, as well as with helping clients in terms of how to really let go, how to move on, how to redefine yourself and your life and your goals and still feel whole on your own, whether you're in that relationship or you're letting go of one or you're now looking for a new one. So how do we focus on ourselves, and then how do we also navigate those relationships, whether we're letting go of them or we're in them or looking for one?
Well, this is important work for sure. And before we dive more into the details of it, I'm really curious to know about your own story. And do you see yourself as, I guess, did you used to be in the place, I guess, that some of your clients come to you needing your support for, and through your own journey? Is that how it sort of, was that the inspiration?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's something that I've always really been interested in. I've always been so interested in the human connection, how we form relationships, and what comes into that, and in terms of subconscious patterns and thinking, and how our inner child and how we grew up really affects then how we may show up in adult relationships. So I went to school for sociology, and I studied psychology, and it was always something that I've been intrigued by. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of when I started sharing and writing on social media as a way to kind of share some tools to help others, give them some food for thought, helping people feel less alone. I realized that it was truly the heartbreak post that I was sharing was one of the things that connected so many of us and really grew our community of the hyped up healers. Where yeah, for sure, I've been through a few heartbreaks myself over the years, and it's definitely something that I can relate to, and something I feel so strongly about in terms of how do we let go once we have had it. I think that's a place that when I connect with clients as well, that's really a place that we feel stuck around sometimes. And it can feel super isolating, even though it is a shared experience. Sometimes as many friends as we may have or family members that are close by, unfortunately, sometimes we just feel like no one can relate to us, and really isolating. So it's been amazing to be able to share kind of what I learned and share some of the tools, and be able to develop some programs and self-paced courses if people are not comfortable doing one-on-one coaching, where people can have like a step-by-step roadmap to success in terms of here's like a 6-step system for me to follow, so I can really come back to myself. And of course, I always compare it to a roller coaster ride of healing from heartbreak. It's not always going to be all the way up and we're riding the highs and always feeling great, but as long as we're moving with the time, then time will help us to heal with that.
Amazing. I am just remembering a conversation that I had with a friend last week about, we were reflecting on relationships, and she was talking about a breakup that she had with somebody who she hadn't been seeing a hugely long time, but she said it was like the breakup didn't it was so what she experienced, the painful emotions that she experienced with the breakup felt so much bigger than the amount of time that she'd known this person. And then kind of this was a couple of years ago that it happened for her, but since then she's realized that it's because that the experience with him sort of was a reminder of lots of different dynamics that she's kind of had to grieve throughout her entire life. So I just found that really interesting, that level of awareness of how sometimes a breakup with a person can open up the door to so much more pain and emotion that maybe that's there bubbling under the surface. So I'd love to ask you about that, or what your thoughts are on that, or if that's something that you see through your work.
Yes, amazing. I'm so glad you brought that up, because relationships are absolutely a reflection, and sort of a container, if you will, to reflect back to us what maybe we gravitated towards when we were younger, what we learned in terms of attachment style growing up with a caregiver, a parent, and back to some inner child wounds. Even if there's so often when we feel like oh, maybe I don't really have anything to work through. Maybe, I had a really good upbringing, things like that. And it's not to say that you need to have something really significant that you remember stick out, traumatic wise, happen growing up. But as you're mentioning, for sure, when we are grieving the loss of a relationship, or even when we're still in that relationship and it hasn't ended, there's all these patterns. It's really a mirror where we can see how we learned to show up, or how we learned was necessary to show up in order to receive love and attention back when our subconscious minds were still very much being programmed from the ages of 0 to 7. We're quite like a sponge and very impressionable by not just our family and caregivers, but by the media that we're watching, and by the school and friends and all of that as well. And, grieving, like I know, as you were just mentioning with your friend, who sometimes we feel like, okay, I dated this person for not that long, or so often I speak to clients that are saying, well, we weren't even truly dating. And so we kind of dissect that, when what they mean by that. But oftentimes they feel like, well, we were seeing each other for, not too long, in their opinion, things like that. So how come I feel this extent of heartbreak and all of that? And it's funny that I remember there's an episode of Sex in the City, one of my favorite shows, and they talk about I can't remember who says it. I think it's Charlotte who says it, and she says she's helping Carrie when Carrie and Big break up at first. It's in the early seasons, and she says something like, getting over that person will take half the amount of time as much as you dated. So if you dated 6 months, it'll take you 3 months. And of course, that isn't very valid. But whenever people have asked me the popular question of, how long do you think this is going to take? And we weren't even dating too long, or perhaps we didn't make it official, things like that. I always let them know that, you're very much grieving somebody who's still alive, which is, it comes with so many challenges, right? And so many of us are either still living in the same city as that person, with lots of memories. Certain streets that we walk down can even become a place of so many memories. And some of us even find ourselves moving away from the city just to kind of be able to give ourselves that break. But for sure, so just be gentle to anyone listening. Be gentle with yourself, and remember that healing is not linear. So there might be times when you're feeling a little bit more confident and feeling like, yeah, I can recognize that I've been processing things, and it feels like I'm making some progress. And there's other days when you're really triggered, and maybe something's happened. Maybe you saw something online, or you see them in person, or a birthday or an anniversary. There's so many triggers. So as I mentioned before, as long as people are moving with the time, then time will help us heal. So regardless of how long we were with that person, because truly it doesn't define the depth of the connection that we can feel with someone, even in a quote unquote short amount of time.
Yeah, completely. And, some of the things you mentioned there about, sometimes you live in the same city as someone. Obviously, a lot of people, well, everyone in the Frollo community is a single parent. Some, different types of single parents. Some are solo parents by choice. Some are widowed parents in our community. But of course, there are lots of people co-parenting with an ex who, the parent, the other parent of their child, who they, some of who are dealing with that own kind of trauma and heartbreak, and in a co-parenting situation, which can make things complicated, needless to say. So would there be any advice for people who are kind of in a situation where they have to see somebody who they're recovering from trauma or heartbreak from on a regular basis?
Yeah, for sure. So I think boundaries, boundaries is the first thing that comes to mind. And this can be, of course, so hard to navigate when you're especially feeling emotionally dysregulated during that time of grieving and recovering, and sharing custody of a child, and still connecting with that person that you're trying to heal from can be quite triggering. So protecting yourself as much as you can in terms of setting some boundaries, whatever those look like for you. And, kind of back to what we were saying before about perhaps some inner child wounds, previous triggers, things, ways that we've learned to show up. I think sometimes when we go to set boundaries with people after we've broken up with them, had a divorce from them, it can be especially challenging if we are someone who tends to either people please or, just sort of have these tendencies where speaking up for ourselves is a bit of a challenge and something that we're working on. So just encouraging yourself to really put yourself first during this time as much as you can, and ask for what you need, having sort of whatever boundaries those might look like to you. So you could say, I prefer if we kind of keep the text messages or the calls to, strictly talking about our child, or, just verbally communicating as well as much as you can. Perhaps, pick up drop off locations if possible, meeting maybe more in public if that works for you. Whatever it kind of needs to be in order for you to succeed and the success of your family. And I think reminding everybody involved that you're all in it together still, and you're very much, the child is such a priority, that reminding each other that, when things might get heated or it might be a little bit triggering, that, hey, like, we both at the end of the day have the same kind of goal in mind, and we want to work together, not just for each other, but also for our family. And so really bringing it back to why we're doing what we're doing, and how to make it as smooth as possible. Because, I'm sure that reminding them that, they would like, I'm sure, for it to be as least stressful as possible too. So the more that you can all work together and just have clear communication and boundaries, the better.
Oh, thank you. And, another thing that I think it can be a common thing experienced with a lot of single parents who are, thinking about getting back out there to date, or feeling like it is way too scary. I couldn't possibly, open up my heart again. I couldn't possibly put myself in that situation again. And I think a lot of single parents do go through that fear of, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it, because for anyone who has been badly scarred in the past, and now it's not just them. There's kind of a child or children involved, and it might just feel that the walls go up very, very high. So I'm wondering what your advice would be to anyone who's feeling that way, and how do people go about trying to break down those iron gates to try and kind of be trusting of love, and also, I suppose, how do people know that they are going to make wise choices for themselves if they're feeling like they made terrible choices in the past?
Yes, beautiful question. I think so much of the coaching that I do and what I see goes back to a lot of perhaps guilt and complete takeover of, that we can sometimes feel like we claim it all. It was either our fault, or there's so many things that we could have done differently. So I like to lovingly remind my community and the coaching clients that hindsight is 2020. So the reason why we can look back and look at anything, and in this case our relationship, we can look back at it and say, oh yeah, I guess I see how this could have felt this way to them, or, oh, I could have done this differently and wish I didn't do that. Instead of, bringing that energy into more of, this, how would anybody ever date me again? How would I get back out there? What if I make the same mistakes again? We need to turn it into, I learned from that. And because I can look back at that and see how things could have been differently, that means that I've grown. So actually using it as like a marking milestone, that, you've grown from this. And just remembering that relationships are vehicles for transformation, essentially. As we said before, they are going to be a confronting container to reflect back to us certain things. And so reminding ourselves of that, and that you've grown, and I think bringing forward, remembering to bring forward what you learned in that relationship, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and what you don't want moving forward. And then the extent of how deeply you love. I think so often I hear, I just wish I didn't love them so much, or they didn't deserve my love, and all of that. So just remembering that the way that you love is a superpower, and it's not something to regret, and it's something that you can look at as you learned more about yourself in the process, and there will be people that will meet you along the way coming up in your future if you open up to them, in terms of they'll be able to deliver that extent of love back to you. So bringing that stuff forward, and then leaving behind all the past regrets about a previous relationship, how they should have, could have, getting stuck in the what ifs, and really just leveraging the lessons that you learned. That's why I have a coaching program, Break Up, Level Up. So we're talking about leveraging and leveling up from what we learned, using it as an opportunity and a springboard to better prepare for the next relationship, if that's what we want. And in terms of feeling ready, that is such a huge question in the community, for sure. Like, it's been this amount of time. Am I ready? Or I don't feel ready. And to that, I always say that you'll never truly feel ready. You'll probably not feel ready ever, maybe. And what does ready even really mean to you? I guess, how can you define feeling ready? It could be different for everyone. So starting to date again, I actually tell people that, starting to date is part of the healing process. Doesn't mean you need to dive into it head first and go for the long-term relationship on the first one. But actually starting to get back out there again, and using those skills, developing those skills to learn more about, okay, what am I looking for? What am I not looking for moving forward? Developing more trust with yourself, building your own confidence that you will be okay regardless. And also learning to hear no sometimes too or learning to say no as well yourself is something that's really valuable when you're getting back into the dating process. So if you're kind of starting to receive that little bit of nudge where you're feeling like, I would like to get back out there again. Of course, it's going to be scary, but just reminding yourself you can take it slowly, but that nothing ventured, nothing gained. So keep moving towards it, and just gently remind yourself that you might never feel truly ready. So sometimes you got to start before you're feeling ready.
Amazing. I was going to ask, how do your coaching programs work? What would it be like if somebody is listening to this podcast and is really curious as to how it all works? How long do they take? What's, some details around that.
Yeah, for sure. So at this time, I'm offering Breakup Level Up. So it is a self-paced program course, if you will, there where people will thereby go through the 6 modules. So there's 6 different modules, and each of them all have, I call them soul assignments. So they're all, they'll have like video coaching lessons where we go through multiple different topics in that module. And then they have soul assignments where there's that, journaling exercise work. There's the meditation, visualization work for them to listen to that's been pre-recorded. There's affirmation audios, which I have, that are huge for people in having those on replay and really starting to affirm that new reality that they want to feel and attract. Lots of different things. EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique, has been amazing for people as well. So lots of different tools that I've added in each module because there's only so much information we can intake. And then, of course, it's so much of heartbreak and breaking free of that and grieving that is through our bodies and nervous system regulation and processing it all, and the mindset shifts, the mindset, and how do we start to kind of reprogram our thoughts. And so many of us don't think that that's possible, and 90% of the thoughts we're thinking on loop are repetitive. So really empowering ourselves to level up and say, hey, we can actually change the way that we're thinking about this. We may not have been able to, control what happened, but here's an opportunity to change what happens next. So that's
I
what
love that.
the course will take you through. Thank you. Yeah. It's within our power. So it's all about empowering ourselves. And so that's kind of how that looks. And the people that are going through the course, at any point, they can do it. They can take as long as they need, which is a really beautiful option about it. So something they can come back to, and there's no rush. They can go through it as quickly or as slowly as they'd like. So that's how that looks like. Otherwise, some folks have also been really curious about the affirmation audios, which is something that you can just grab either one of them or a bundle of them and start to listen to those. It's been also such a helpful tool in my journey, listening to those, that I wanted to create some. And they've been really great for reprogramming those subconscious minds.
I keep meaning to do daily affirmations. Actually, it's on my to-do list, and I'm also keen to get my son into the habit as well, because, as you say, it's just that reprogramming, isn't it? So many of us are used to this negative self-chatter going on. So I think it's a really powerful way to change that. But your courses sound absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for the insight into how they work. So really, I've just got one last question for you, McKenzie. There's so much interesting stuff in there, but I was wondering, what are your tips for somebody who can kind of take through, for anyone who can easily take through these tips in daily life, just like maybe a couple of easy things for people to do that will, in terms of, healing, self-love, and just, getting into that sort of reprogramming positive mindset.
For sure. So I think remembering, going back to, time won't heal unless I move with it. So really empowering ourselves to remember that time will be on our side as long as we're moving with it. And doesn't have to be huge, massive steps. It can just be a little bit of something every day, whether that is a little bit of journaling. Don't underestimate brain dumping. I call it all of your thoughts, and that's an exercise that we do too. It's just, getting out all of your thoughts too on the paper, things like that, allowing yourself all of the tools, whether it's that, meditations, visualizations, lots of different ways that we can really allow ourselves to process what's happening, and not get so caught up in it and have the loop of the same thoughts going on that maybe aren't serving us. So I think remembering, okay, how can I move with time? And time's going on. So how am I to process this in the best way? And looking at it as an opportunity. And I know that is can be really, really challenging to hear, especially when you are in the thick of it. And you might be thinking, how can I find anything good with this? And so just encourage yourself to, like I said before, that we may not have had control over what happened, but we can control what happens next. And that's within our control in terms of we choose what to do with it. And I think anybody listening right now too is here because, you've already got that. And I always mention that to so many of my coaching clients and the community members, that, the only kind of prerequisite is done. You're here, you're eager, you're listening. And that's really all it takes to kind of start to change and to navigate this with as much confidence as you possibly can. You just have to, start to learn, be open to learning, be open to it turning out better than you can imagine, I think is really crucial. So much of our thoughts might be going to the default of how negative this might feel on the surface and all of that. But remembering that, stay open to it turning out better than you can imagine. And really just using it as an opportunity to look at what happened in the relationship. How did I show up? And do this sort of as a loving audit, I like to call it. So take a loving audit, what happened, the good, the bad, all of it, and then use it as a vehicle of transformation to move forward and just taking, that data entry, taking that information in and reminding yourself that you're here doing what you need to do. You're here experiencing these connections, and as painful as they are to lose them, you're able to kind of use that and leverage it to move forward, and to come out of this better than ever.
Oh, I love that. A loving audit. Right. That's the way I'm going to
Yeah.
look at everything from now on. In hindsight, I think that's really powerful. So lastly, just if you could let everyone know where to find you, that would be amazing. Where can people connect with you?
Of course, yeah. So on Instagram as well as TikTok, I am under the Hyped Up Healing. So that's where you can find me. And then any sort of kind of links to anything that I'm offering will be on those platforms. I've joined Threads as well, which has been interesting. So if you're more of someone that kind of likes to read things that are written instead, there's Threads as well. But yeah, the Hyped Up Healing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, McKenzie. This is such a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it. The work that you're doing is actually relevant, I think, for every single human being on this planet. It's really, really, really great. And I can't wait to stay connected and see how we can kind of weave some of it into the Frollo community as well.
Yes, absolutely, Zoe. It was so lovely connecting with you, and thank you for the opportunity. And yes, to anyone listening, I'm thinking about you and sending you lots of love and strength. Thank you so much for having me on the Frollo podcast.
You are so welcome. Have an amazing day, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favor to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review? This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com or follow us on Instagram at Frollo app. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.